As we mentioned in the last discussion, that he is extremely scared of losing self-control. He is frightened less of death, less of pain, and less of torture than he's frightened losing his morality, his ethics, and his moral responsibility. He does not want power, he does not want wealth, and that is why the slave Epictetus and the emperor Marcus Aurelius considered themselves at par, or even Marcus Aurelius felt that Epictetus was the person who influenced him and made his life better. When the Stoic talks about himself and his moral responsibility and the thing that only he can control, it does not mean that he has no care or no concern about the other. His actual life is about the other. And that is why what he wants to do is to rely on himself so he does not encumber or burden the other. Because if you start blaming other people because they didn't let you do this or they didn't let you do that, then of course you are actually stating that what your responsibilities are, others were responsible for and not yourself. So while it is a self-empowering statement and a self-empowering process where you are only concerned about the things that only you have power over, it is also a freeing of others, that you do not tie other people in blame. You do not tie other people in guilt. When Stoic says that he is only concerned about the things that he has control over, he has no control over the skies, he has no control over time, he has no control over illness, he has no control over death. He's concerned about them, but he will not concern about them so much that he will become worried, anxious, and sick. And the same thing, what he does is about other people. He does not worry about their actions because these are not in his control. So what he does is that he concerns himself and judges himself by the actions that only he can do. So if somebody else does some action, there is no responsibility of that action of the other person on one's own self. So one cannot blame oneself for somebody else's action. Similarly, when you do the action, you cannot blame the other person. You cannot say, you made me do that, or look what you convinced me and I had to do that. That is not acceptable. This is abrogating own moral responsibility. Imagine what kind of courage a Stoic does advocate and empower you when he says to you, free the other people of your burdens. And when the Stoic takes responsibility for his own will, his own talk, his own thoughts, and his own plans, his actions, that is when he frees other people of all the encumbrance, that nobody else is made to feel guilty. Nobody else is to be blamed. So that is the core. And this is what we see where the modern psychology has borrowed so heavily from Stoicism. And they have borrowed so heavily the CBT, the REBT, the behavioral therapies, and the other mindfulness and other exercises from Gestalt therapy as well. All these have borrowed heavily from Marcus Aurelius and his indirect teacher, Epictetus, the Roman slave. People have claimed that Stoicism allows you to not protest, not react, be content with your lot. So if you're a slave, you're a slave. Be a good slave. And perchance, if you're the emperor, you're the emperor. That is not true. Because the moral responsibility of virtue and enacting virtue for the good of all and greater good, that being the virtue, is Stoics' number one hierarchy and number one priority. So when the Stoic is confronted with these challenges where for their virtue, for their moral responsibility, they have to defend their family, because this is for the greater good, they will lay down their lives. If they have to defend their city, their country, they will lay down their lives. And if they have to defend the innocent, because justice is something that is core part of Stoics' virtue. So if a Stoic sees that there is injustice going on, what is Stoic's moral responsibility at that juncture? That he will take it upon himself as that moral responsibility to stand up and defend the innocent and to attack the injustice. And so this idea that people have suggested, and other philosophers have suggested, more contemporary ones like Nietzsche, and as we mentioned last time, as it was suggested, that Jean-Paul Sartre also suggested that it takes away the magic of emotion and just leaves you as an unfeeling human being. That is extremely different from the truth, because when you read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations or Enchiridion or the Discourses of Epictetus, you see human beings, emotional human beings, trying to deal with extremely challenging aspects of life. They're trying to deal with painful aspects of life, of grief, death of loved ones, defeats in war, humiliation, deceit, and treachery from loved ones. So when you see Stoicism in that bigger picture, it actually is a complete mode of life, a complete modality of living, in which you have the hierarchy and then you have various actions. And the hierarchy in number one is virtue, that contains justice, and then the actions with which you take responsibility for your actions as well, your will and your thought. One other criticism that people have made of Stoicism is that they demand the impossible from people. But that is not true, because what Stoics demand is very simple, and because they also say that a Stoic is a person who is in one with nature, and what is being one with nature is being rational, and what is being virtuous is being just and rational. And basically what happens is that Stoics suggest that if a person can achieve the height of virtue in truth or in good character, in courage, in honesty, in dignity, in prudence, then everybody should be able to do that. If it is within the ambit of one human being, it is within the grasp of all other human beings. So if somebody says, as we see that people say nowadays, oh, we can't do that because, that guy is like an angel, and that person was actually a Sufi saint, we can't equate ourselves with the prophets if they never told any untruths, or they were completely impeccable in character and honorable and dignified, or we can't match that. Stoicism does not accept that. What it suggests is that if Mr. Edhi, God bless his soul, was able to achieve the height of honesty, dignity, and help of other people, every human being is capable of doing that. If Mr. M.M. Alam, squadron leader, was able to show so much courage, if General Athar Hussain Malik defeated the enemy in the largest tank battle, that everybody can do and everybody should be able to do. So in Stoics, when they look at the people of gold, the politicians, the rulers, they want rejection of pleasure, that the rulers must behave like philosopher kings as described in Plato. What they must do is to reject pleasure and must not indulge in their lusts of power, greed of money, and sensual lusts. What men of silver and men of the courageous soldiers, what they must do, the fighters, that they must embrace the courage and be as courageous as the most courageous. And one cannot be less courageous than the other, because it is within the power of the other to be the most courageous. So one cannot say that, oh, it was from that era or from that tribe, or those circumstances were different. If you are that particular person who is totally responsible for your actions, and you are in control of yourself, and you are in control of your thoughts and your emotions and your actions, and you are rational and you are considered, then you must know that there will come a time when you may have to confront death. You will have to confront sickness. You will have to confront grief. And that is where you need to be one with nature, because nature is constantly changing, generation after generation, season after season, and time after time.